Liz from Heal at Home Pet Care, and today is day 1 of the Pet Food Transition Challenge. So welcome and thank you for joining me. And honestly, this information is just coming from like deep within me. I feel like this is such a public service message almost. There's a lot of information, and there's a lot of really good information on the internet, but you have to sift through a lot of garbage, quite honestly, to get to it. So I wanted to kind of just break it down for you so that you can go on your own and do this and feel confident without it being scary, but also so that you know what to look for, so that when you're reading through information, you know what makes sense and what is right and what is really just not very informed information. So this is a challenge that will be for your cats and dogs mostly, but also we'll go into a little bit, we'll touch on exotics. I think it's really important. That's a forgotten part of pet ownership. And it's really important to feed your exotic pets or pocket pets the way that they need to be fed. So why transition your pet to a healthy pet food diet? And basically my story is I had a cat who was vomiting daily. He was about a year old and he vomited every day at the same time every day. And at the time I was studying traditional Chinese medicine. And I started putting it together. You know, I got a little bit concerned. He vomited each day. And but he looked fine, and since I'm a veterinary technician, I checked his vital signs. I was monitoring him to make sure he wasn't sick, and he looked fine, but this vomiting really concerned me. So I decided to really buckle down and get into a diet change for him. And if I had gone into the doctor, what might have happened is they might have done some blood work, which could be very costly, which in some cases might be needed, but in this case, I didn't. That might have shown that he might have had some pancreatic issues, some inflammation somewhere. They might have diagnosed him with pancreatitis, which would have been pretty extreme, inflammatory bowel disease, things like that. So at that point, I didn't think it was warranted. I was going to wait it out. And I researched and I did a dietary change with him. And quite honestly, he did not like it. It took months. He's a very picky eater. He loved his kibble. He was pretty much trained to eat kibble. And it was a slow process, but we did it. And I took my time and I went by his rules. And now he eats a variety of things. He's not scared of food anymore. He'll try something new, and he eats really well. So, and he doesn't vomit at all. It's incredible. So that's all he needed. And there are reasons why you would transition your pet to a more natural diet. And those things include chronic conditions like allergies. If your pet has ear allergies, a lot of ear scratching. If they have inflammatory bowel disease, they've been diagnosed with something like that, a diet change can be helpful. If they are vomiting, if they are chronically constipated, if they have arthritis, if they're overweight, if they have bladder stones, we're going to join in. If they have bladder stones, dental disease, excessive shedding, asthma, things like that. So research has really shown that diet can be really helpful in helping these conditions. And maybe either decreasing medications or getting off medications, but please work with your veterinarian. When not to transition your pet, if you have a pet that is sick or elderly, like in the middle of an illness, you might not want to do the transition right now, unless it's a transition that would help that illness. And if you have a cat with chronic kidney disease, you might want to be careful because you have to have certain ratios of protein in the diet that could be helpful depending on the stage of kidney disease. But in the beginning of the process, it can be really helpful. And if your pet is immunosuppressed, so if their immunity is down and they have a condition that causes them to be immunosuppressed, you want to be careful because if you don't cook food properly, if you're home cooking, or if you get a processed food commercial diet that is not processed properly, their immune system might not be able to handle it. So there is something called HPP sterilization in food, and that means that it's high pressure cooked so that it gets rid of all the pathogens. So that's something we'll talk about too. And work with your veterinarian or find someone online who does food transitions or food diets for pets. There's a lot of information. I'll give you resources at some point during this video series. So if you have a cat to transition, my advice is to go really slow. Don't force food on them. Don't hold food back. They can be really picky, they can be a little bit more difficult. Cats are obligate carnivores, which means they must eat high protein diet. That also means that they should get a lot of moisture in their food. So if you're feeding a kibble diet only to your cat and it's free feeding where the bowl's out all the time, I would suggest that you cut back really slowly and get them off of that kind of diet. It's probably one of the worst things that they can be on. A better diet would be even a commercial canned food, even if the quality is not as good, because they're getting the moisture at least and higher protein. So with cats, you want to go slow also because there's a condition called hepatic lipidosis that if you restrict your cat's calories over a series of days, it would have to be over many days, and it's usually less than 50% of their caloric requirements, and they kind of stop eating, you can cause this condition, and it turns into a medical condition. So you don't want that to happen. So what you want to do is know how many calories your cat needs to eat, and as you transition, keep that calorie count at that level. We'll go into that also. So dogs, you can usually do the transition within 10 to 14 days, but again, there's no rush. You can go slowly. There's no finish line to get to. It's a process. So you want to give their gut flora a chance to acclimate to the new food. So that's our goal, and just go slowly. You're going to be trying different foods, and the goal is not to just change your dog from one, or your cat from one food to one other food. You might be changing them from one dry kibble or one canned food to something that's more natural, like a variety of foods. If you work with a veterinarian that practices traditional Chinese medicine, they might go by seasons and feed seasonally or feed certain diets according to body type. So you can work with them also. Commercial diets versus homemade diets versus raw diets. So the word raw has a really bad rap. And by raw, it doesn't mean throwing your pet a big wad of chopped meat. That is not a complete diet. So instead of raw, we're going to think about natural diets, maybe something like ancestral diets, although that's like a trigger word now that people put on pet food, so I would be careful. You want something that's whole body, it's whole foods, natural, organic if you can. So that's how we're going to think about raw food. And home cooked diet would be if you do cook for yourself and you want to give your pet some of that, or you're afraid of giving something raw because your pet is immunosuppressed or you just don't like the idea of it, then you can do some home cooking. So the commercial diets, why they're so palatable and why pets love them, it's because as the finishing process, they are sprayed with an animal digest, and it makes it more edible. It makes the pet want it more. So that's why they crave that food. It has a spray coating on it, because otherwise they wouldn't eat it. You know, a lot of commercial food, unfortunately, is kind of garbage. It wouldn't taste good otherwise. So that's what we're trying to break them out of, that habit of craving that food. And working with a nutritionist is really good because they would probably do some blood work and see where your pet's at to start with, and then you can monitor that over the process. Make sure they're getting the right nutrients and vitamins and minerals, and that their systems are working okay. And they can do weigh-ins for you. You can get a scale on your own too and do weigh-ins. Check their body condition score, which is a chart that the medical profession uses to gauge where your pet is at, and they kind of do an overall look of your pet from the outside and kind of feel their muscle mass and fat and ratio and kind of get a gauge of where they're at. So it's not a bad idea to monitor your pet during this process. I can tell you that this can be done wrong. I've seen people do a raw pet diet and they literally take the chopped meat out of the fridge or get a rotisserie chicken, and that's what they're feeding their pet. And those things can be full of oil, which can be bad for your pet. They're not balanced. Your pet needs fat, oils, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, amino acids. So really you have to do this right, but it's easy. You can do it. So don't forget also in this process, your pet needs exercise. Especially cats, like they're not hunting. If you want a natural diet, they'd be hunting in the wild. They'd be using their claws. They'd be moving and swatting and crouching down to catch something. Your dogs would be if they're looking for a hunt, they're walking around looking for something to eat, and then as they find it, they might have to work a little bit to get it, and then they're chewing and gnawing. So there are all these things involved in a natural diet. It's not just the food that you pick. So think about that. Think about keeping your pets socialized, engaged, happy, get outdoor time, fresh water, natural food, and think in terms of whole natural forms of food. So just like with people, how they say the less amount of ingredients on something, the better it is for you. So if you're going to buy something with, let's say, chicken, and it just says chicken on it, you know it's chicken. If it starts saying pea protein, chicken meal, chicken byproducts, and then adds a whole bunch of words that you don't even know, that's not natural. So think about those kinds of things also. So for today, your task is to think about what you can reasonably do with your pet. You have to think about your time constraints and how much time you can spend doing this. If you have time on the weekends, you can always get this stuff ready for the week ahead of time, or even a month, and freeze some of these things. So think about your time. If you really don't have time and you don't really have time for yourself to eat well, and your pet, you can't do it, then we'll talk about some options about doing the best quality that you can do. So be realistic with that part of it. And then once you get into the process, I love cooking, I love eating, I love, finding different ways and more natural ways of doing things. So for me, it's fun. It's kind of relaxing, but figure that out for yourself. And then the money involved. I think a lot of people are worried about money that they spend on this, and it does not have to be expensive. I see people buying all kinds of supplements and treats for their pets that are just garbage. And if you actually took that money and put it towards a natural diet, even the supplements you wouldn't need if you have a full, complete natural diet. So think about the money to spend, and honestly, it doesn't cost much more, if at all, and you save on health bills in the long run. And then about the energy that you have to put into this. So think about time, money, energy that you have, and then join me tomorrow for day 2, where we will choose